Hi everyone. This is listen and repeat lesson. Okay, we are going to listen for main ideas on Buenos Aires, Beijing, and Dubai, major cities. Listen.
Many people compare Buenos Aires to Paris.
Many people compare Buenos Aires to Paris.
I know what they mean.
I know what they mean.
Indeed, the stamp of Europe is difficult to miss in this city of boulevards,
Indeed, the stamp of Europe is difficult to miss in this city of boulevard,
palaces, opera houses, and
palaces, opera houses,
monuments.
and
But
monuments.
Buenos Aires is so much more.
But Buenos Aires is so much more.
I was born outside of Buenos Aires,
I was born outside of Buenos Aires,
but was attracted to the city
but I was attracted to the city
by the cafes that
by the cafes
satisfy the thirst and spirit of every hopeful writer.
that satisfy the spirit, the source and spirit of every hopeful writer.
Writers, journalists, musicians,
Writers, journalists, musicians,
and politicians met here,
and politicians met here,
sipping the strong coffee,
sipping the strong coffee,
listening to the mix of ideas.
listening to the mix of ideas.
I developed ideas for my novels.
I developed ideas for my novel.
My favorite square is the Plaza de Mayo,
My favorite square is the Plaza de Mayo,
and standing there today for me is like entering a time machine.
and standing there today for me is like entering a time machine.
It was here that the seeds of independence were planted,
It was here that the seeds of independence were planted,
where Argentinian President Juan Perón
where Argentinian President Juan Perón
and his wife Evita
and his wife Evita
shouted from the balcony of their residence,
shouted from the balcony of their residence,
the Casa Rosada.
the Casa Rosada.
The arts and music scene in Buenos Aires
The arts and music scene in Buenos Aires
was always a center of cultural innovation.
was always a center of cultural innovation.
Ideas and values
Ideas and values
still considered strange elsewhere
still considered strange elsewhere
were often accepted here.
were often accepted here.
Filmmakers Louis Buñuel,
Filmmakers Louis Bluner,
Ingmar Bergman,
Ingmar Bergman,
and Woody Allen
and Woody Allen
were celebrated in my city
were celebrated in my city
when they were still almost unknown in Europe and
when they were still almost unknown in Europe
the United States.
and the United States.
The writer Jorge Luis Borges
The writer Giorgio Louis Borges
used the lively neighborhood where I live
used the lively neighborhood where I live
as a setting for many of his stories.
as a setting for many of his stories.
The most celebrated singers and
The most celebrated singers
conductors
and conductors
not only came to Buenos Aires,
not only came to Buenos Aires,
but also toured dozens of opera houses
but also toured dozens of opera houses
throughout the country.
throughout the country,
And the dance, the tango,
and the dance, the tango,
born in the streets of our neighborhood,
born in the streets of our neighborhood,
soon captured the world.
soon captured the world.
There are some people who feel embarrassed by the European aspects of Buenos Aires.
There are some people who feel embarrassed by the European aspects of Buenos Aires
And believe we should be more Latin American.
and believe we should be more Latin American.
But Europe's influence was never a limitation for the
But Europe's influence was never a limitation
city.
for the city.
More a launching pad.
More a launching pad.
European and Latin American characters lived
European and Latin American characters
together,
live together,
creating uniqueness.
creating uniqueness.
Those of us who live here,
Those of us who live here,
and even visitors who allow the city to reveal itself
and even visitors who allow the city to reveal itself
to them,
to them,
No Buenos Aires to be like no other.
No Buenos Aires to be like no other.
2.
2.
Beijing.
Beijing.
The city of Beijing,
The city of Beijing.
busy and huge,
Busy and huge.
home to some 15 million people,
Home to some 15 million people.
was originally designed along the simple lines of a body.
Was originally designed along the simple lines of a body.
According to traditional Chinese stories,
According to traditional Chinese stories,
the god Nia
the god Nia
tamed the rivers of the country,
tamed the river of the country,
and the layout of the city's buildings
and the layout of the city's buildings
reflected his physical form.
reflected his physical form.
The Gate of Heavenly Peace,
The gate of heavenly peace,
Tiananmen,
Tiananmen,
was his brain,
was his brain,
and the Zhengyang Gate
and the Ganyan gate
was his head.
was his head.
Today,
Today,
Beijing's largest map publisher
Beijing largest map publisher
has to update their Beijing diagrams
has to update their Beijing diagrams
every 3 months
every
to
3
try to
months
keep up with
to try to keep up
changes.
with the changes.
Sometimes
Sometimes
they even try to draw tomorrow.
they even try to draw tomorrow.
On the wall of their office hangs an enormous map of Beijing.
On the wall of their office hangs an enormous map of Beijing.
Future tense.
Future tense.
There are new streets,
There are new streets,
new buildings,
new buildings,
new bus lines.
new bus lines.
The only thing that isn't new is the feeling of change.
The only thing that is not new is the feeling of change,
Because for the past century,
because for the past century,
Beijing
Beijing
has been a city which
has been a city
has been constantly
which has been
Changing.
constantly changing.
the people, though,
The people, though,
will always tell you what they think.
will always tell you what they think.
In modern times,
In modern times,
that's become the heart of Beijing.
that's become the heart of Beijing.
The city's construction is changing quickly,
The city's construction is changing quickly,
but the local character
but the local character
can still be drawn in clear,
can still be drawn in clear,
precise lines.
precise lines.
The typical Beijinger
The typical Beijinger
is direct,
is direct,
practical,
practical,
and has opinions.
and has opinions.
He knows politics and culture
He knows politics and culture
better than business.
better than business.
The Beijinger usually expresses his opinions
The Beijinger usually expresses his opinions
through humor
through humor
rather than anger.
rather than anger.
Mostly,
Mostly,
he remembers.
he remembers.
He remembers the clear blue skies
He remembered the clear blue skies
of the pre-pollution capital.
of the pre-pollution capital.
This is Beijing pride.
This is Beijing pride.
There is no other part of the country
There is no other part of the country
where memories are so long.
where memories are so wrong.
3. Dubai.
On a recent trip to Dubai,
Dubai. On a recent trip to Dubai,
I took a quick walk through the narrow roads of the Bastakia quarter.
I took a quick walk through the narrow roads of the Bastakia quarter,
An old village that provides a look at a slower paced time.
an old village that provides a look at slower paced time.
In the village of Bastakia, you cannot take a walk on your own
In the village of Bastakia, you cannot take a walk on your own
because its roads were
because its roads
designed in such a way
were designed in such a way
that only the people who lived in the village
that only the people who lived in the village
knew the way through it,
knew the way through it,
making it a safer place to live.
making it a safer place to live.
The roads were a place for people
The roads were placed for people
to get together
to get together
over dinner and special feasts.
over dinner and special feasts,
to share news
to share news,
and to discuss common village issues.
and to discuss common village issues.
High wind towers
High wind towers
grow from houses, bringing cool air throughout the home.
grow from houses, bringing cool air throughout the home.
The more I walked around the Bastakia,
The more I walked around the Bastakia,
the more I felt the greatness of the people
the more I felt the greatness of the people
who once lived in them.
who once lived in them. Okay? So you listen again and repeat. This is a practice in order to develop and improve your learning skills, learning your English language skills. Thank you.
I left Old Dubai